I just feel like it's a very community-driven conference. It also has a lot of quality, and people are just nice. Hi, my name is Sarah, and this is Asian Conf in Dornbirn.
Amazing venue. Austria is beautiful. Meeting all of the people in the community and getting to go and hang out and ski.
Hello. Hi everybody. I'm incredibly tired today. Yes, I did land this morning, and then I had a nice little stint in Swiss jail, and I waltzed into the men's restroom this morning. I'm sorry to the guy who I scared. You might be somewhere in here. So now I'm about to make another probably poor decision and live code a bunch in front of you. Hello. Anyway, my name is Cassidy Williams. I work at React Training. We train React, and we also maintain a nice little library called React Router, if you've heard of it. And we do a bunch of other cool open source stuff and teaching stuff, and I'm going to be talking about UI libraries. On the program, it says building reusable UI libraries with React, and I'll be using React, but these are some concepts that I think can apply to all kinds of different frameworks and libraries, but it's something that's really good to know. So I'm going to kind of just dive right in and start going through this. So the first type of component that I really want to start with and then kind of build off of is using a single entry point in a UI library, a single data entry point. And so if you look right here, this is a pretty just basic concept of a component where if you had a menu bar, you have some links and you can pass in the data, you can probably guess what it does. There's some links with those labels that point to that. It's not that crazy of a concept. I'm going to switch over to my demo really quick, and hopefully you can see it. If you can't, start screaming. But anyway, I have this little accordion that I built right here, and I'm going to walk through the code really quick so you can see how it all works. I have these little cities. They expand. It's nice. And the way this component works is we have our app, and it has just this accordion data is data right here. And then it pulls in a label where I just did city names. Dornbirn, I have a little icon right here, and then it also pulls in a description. And this description component, it's literally just text. I just did it to decrease this page size for you. So once I have all of this data put into the accordion component, we have this nice little hefty component right here. We have this active index and set active index, and the initial state is 0 when I load the page. And then it maps all this data into a fragment. And so we do a data.map, we pull in a tab and an index, we check if the index is equal to the active index, then we get is active, just walking through all of this. And then it has the class. If it's active, then it's expanded, and then it puts in that label, that icon, which comes from the label and icon down here, and then it pulls in the tab content. So long story short, it lets you do all of that, and then again, as you click around, it sets the active index and changes these. So it's a pretty simple, just kind of state container type of component. Now, there's a conversation that happens when you have some kind of UI library that you're working on where someone says, oh, this is great, except can you add this, or can you do this? And so, for example, let's just say I am a person who really just doesn't want to think about skiing right now. I'm nervous about it. I've never skied before. And so I want to disable the Accordion tab. And right now, with this single entry point right here, there's not a lot of ways to disable this piece of data right here. One thing that I could do is I could put it up here and add like a disabled is true or something like that, and then check that. I could have like a disabled, and then if like there's some string that equals like this, then I could say, oh, then that one should be disabled. There's a few different ways. When I'm not sure what to do when I need to add a feature, I like to look to history. So Jquery Ui. Thank you for your laughter. I can use it. So jQuery Ui, they have a pretty decent accordion component, and they also have this nice little disabled thing where they have disabled is true. They have a few different options for how you can do it. They have some decent components, jQuery Ui. I like it. I thought it was nice. They have this tabs component. Let's see if I could find that one, tabs, where they also have a disabled one. And I like the way they did this one. They have the index of the tab that they want to disable. And so let's just say I'll copy them and say I want to disable a tab at a certain index. I want to disable one of these panels in here. So what I could do is I could add a prop and do disabled and then just an array. And in this case, I want it to be 1. So when you have this single point of entry where you're passing in data, you pass it in with props, and that's kind of a core part of React. It's probably not new to you, but we'll just add this feature really quick. And so in the accordion, we have data, and now we're also going to have a disabled thing in here, and I'll have the default value of that just be an empty array. And then I could say const is disabled, and then I'll do if disabled.includes index, like that. And then I can do some kind of beautiful little ternary thing right here, and I'll do is disabled, question mark, disabled, and then do that. How gross is that? Oh, I love it. So did you know you could nest ternary? So fun. And then we could also have a little if statement in here too, so that way we don't set the active index when we do this. And so I'll do if not is disabled, then we'll set the active index. And now, hey, look at that, it's disabled. No skiing for Cassidy. So we have this disabled tab now in our accordion, and this works great. This gets the job done. But what starts to happen is now you might say, okay, well now I'm a person who wants to use this library, but I want to rearrange the text in the icon, or now I want to be able to I don't know, update whatever this looks like. You start to want more and more features, and with this single entry point right here, you start to get a lot of props, and it starts to become a lot. And when you're looking at just a normal JavaScript function or any function, some function like this, if you see a function that takes in A, B, and C, you're like, aha, yes, this is a normal function that takes in these values and it does something with them. But then when you start to have a function that takes in this, and then this, and then it starts to take in tons of things like this, that's when you start to say, what the heck is happening? Why is this function doing so many things? Why does it need so many values in there? And with React, we often are just like, oh no, these aren't just tons of parameters, it's just one. And we call it props. And we try to be all sneaky and smart, but really it's taking in so many things. When I was building this accordion component, I wanted to look into other ones to see how some people have built accordion components. And I found this one, and it takes in so many props. Look at all of these different props that it takes in. And it works, it gets the job done, but it kind of makes you question, why is there so much responsibility on this one component? It's kind of like if you were given a Lego set of some kind, and when you open it up, you just have a giant Lego, and you're like, well, this was fun. So this is to introduce a concept, This is to introduce a concept that I think is a really key part of building a reusable UI library, and what I really want to talk about today, and that's compound components. And so compound components, this is a definition I kind of patched together on the airplane on the way here, because I couldn't come up with a good one before, but it's a set of components that delegate rendering control across a bunch of different elements, typically child elements, and meanwhile the entire component itself, the entire compound component, manages state as a whole. And that's a lot of fancy words. It also could be just two components that work together that accomplish a task. And that's generally what a compound component is. And so, again, I had this menu bar example before where it takes in all of this data. It had that one entry point. A compound component version of this might look something like this, where you have the outer menu bar, but then the actual link tags right inside of here, these actually manage the rendering of each of those links, but the menu bar as a whole manages the state together. This isn't just a React thing. I want to make that clear again, like I mentioned before. This can be done in many different frameworks, and it also natively is on the web. Can anybody think of a compound component that exists? Select, yes, select. So select components, you never see an option thing out in the wild. It's always within a select element. Another one is tables. You always see a TD inside of a TR or a TH, and that's always inside of a table. This is a native compound component that's built into the web already. And so with React, or with whatever framework you choose to use, or no frameworks, if you just listen to the last talk, if you build compound components, you can kind of delegate control and then give your users of your API a little bit more ability to not only extend your API, but also to kind of decide how they want to use it. So let's get back to the code. What I'm going to do now is convert this gigantic accordion giant Lego into a bunch of small Legos, little pieces that you can put together. So inside this app, instead of having this one entry point here, I want to be able to kind of have a bunch of different ones. And so I'm going to do an early return right here. And then inside this return, we're going to start seeing tons of errors on the left. Ignore those. We'll fix those later. So I'll say accordion, and then I'll say CC for compound components. And then I want to say for each of those, we'll call it a section, like that. And then inside each section, it's going to have a title, and it's going to have the content in there. Title, oh no. Okay, title and content. And so, for example, this one would be Dornmern, and then I could also add this icon here, or if I was one of those that wanted the icon on the other side, I could just do that willy-nilly, however I want. And then we'll do content. And then inside of here, again, I have my description component, so I can just plop that in there. So in theory, this is how I want it to work. Again, ignore the errors. And I can just paste that across each time and then do lec, and then I'll do lec in there. And so again, this is what we want to be able to do. And then I had Madrid, and then Madrid. Okay, so now that we have generally our final results for what we want to do, let's start implementing each of these sections step by step. And so I'm going to do the function signatures first. I'll do function accordion CC. That is going to render div, and let's see, I have the div here, data accordion, like this. Data accordion, and then what it'll take in instead of props, a key part of compound components is that instead of taking in props to render things, it takes in children. And children is just a regular prop, it's just misunderstood like most children. Okay, cool. So we're going to have this accordion CC. Oh, I gotta laugh with that one. Let's see, section, oh my word, section. And then we'll also have title. And then we'll have content too. And each of these are going to render children inside of a div. Because really it's just this giant accordion is going to be rendering whatever children are passed in, which are sections. Sections are going to render content and titles. Content. And so the section I have, let's see, what did I put for section? Oh, do I not have anything? Cool. I'll just make it a div then. Fun. Okay. We're going to return children in here. And then I'll just return children for now. I'm sure I'll do something more with that later. Oh, don't yell at me. Oh, it's okay. We'll get there later. children, and then, oh, you know what? We also are going to want to add that whole disabled thing too, like this as a prop. Props are okay, we just don't want too many of them. So I'll make section also taken disabled, like that. And then children here. Sorry, this part is the boring part. I promise it'll get much more interesting once I've returned everything. This is going to return a div, and that one's going to be a title. I'm going to copy all of this for that. And then we'll do the same thing with content as well. We're going to return, and then I'm going to copy the content like that. Cool. So at least some errors might go away. Kind of. That's fine. Oh, it's the fragment. Thank you. I appreciate your yelling. Okay, cool. So, oh, and now it has all of this tab content stuff. We're just rendering children. And then we don't need to worry about these tab labels and tab icons. We can just do children again here too. Okay, cool. So we have all these variables that we haven't actually used yet. And so I'm going to do, we're going to need to get an index. We're going to need to get is active. We're going to need to do a lot of things. So I'm going to do index. I'm just going to do 0 and add to do there. And then we need active index. Also 0 to do. This is what live coding's all about. Set active index. That's going to be a function that does nothing to do. And then, oh, we'll also need to get disabled too. Const is disabled. And then false to do. Cool. Nice. Now it's done. And we'll also do the exact same thing down here. Content needs to know about is active. Actually, we don't need an on-click on content. Let's get rid of that. So it really just needs to know the is active part. So I'm going to get is active. Oh, I'll do is active is if index is equal to active index. Okay. Cool. So we have an index, we have an active index. The active index is the tab that already exists. Is active just checks if they're the same, then we do stuff with it. Let's see. We're going to do the same thing down here. We're going to get the index, active index, and check on that. Hey, look at that. It doesn't work, but it does stuff. The errors are gone, and that's all coding is about. So we have something going so far. Now we need to start actually rendering real things. We need to get rid of all of these to-do statements that I have in there. So let's first talk about active index and set active index. Those sound an awful lot like state, don't they? But if we have the state down here, we don't necessarily know where the active index is at any given time. If we keep setting the active index and it lives in this LEC panel, then we don't know if we need to move it up or down to Madrid and that sort of thing, which means we need to lift state up to the parent. And I'm actually going to be lifting it all the way to this accordion CC thing. And I'm going to do const active index and then set active index. And I'll do use state and initialize that as 0. So now that we have this state here, we can pass it down to all of our children individually. But here's the thing. With compound components, the power behind them is that we have these different things that kind of just are self-aware. Children can be self-aware because of what parents give them. It's a great metaphor for life. But we don't want to explicitly say, okay, your index will be 0, your index will be 1, and your active index is true or false. We don't want to pass those in via props because that kind of defeats the purpose of compound components. And so we can use a handy hook that if you haven't used it before, or if you haven't used the object before, it's called context. And I'm going to import use context and create context here. And what these do is it creates an object that kind of spawns this tree where it can create a provider that, how do I say this? The provider allows it's, again, metaphor for children. A provider provides things to its children. But anything inside of context, it kind of acts as a communication channel between the parent, which is the provider, and any children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren of that parent. And so with this accordion CC, let's just say I'll have a const and then accordion context equals create context. Now that we have this context object, what we can do with it is pass values from the parent down to the children. And the way that works is we do accordion context dot provider. And then in doing that, and we're going to put this stuff inside of there, like that. Now everything inside of this provider, which again is all of the children in there, they will be able to have access to whatever values we give this accordion context. And so if I put a value right here and just put index and set active index like that, now, whenever one of the children calls set active index, it'll call set active index for anything that's using this active index variable. And that's really powerful when you think of, for example, I made a theme picker on one of my side projects, and multiple components was using the theme variable that was given by the provider, but only the theme picker component actually used the set theme. And so when it called set theme, now anything using this active index variable or the theme variable had the changes propagated, and I think that's so cool. So anyway, now that we have this active index and set active index passed in as an object with this provider, we can use them. And so let's get rid of some of these to-dos. The way we can pull them out is we can say, we're going to pull them out and say active index, and then set active index. And then in here we'll do use context, and we'll pass in the accordion context, like that. And we'll take out the duplicate variables there. And now we have variables that exist and are real. And right now it's, again, we're still kind of working on it, but the fact that we have these variables that are now shared amongst different aspects of the compound component is really exciting. And I'm also going to pull this active index and set active index down here, although I don't need set. I can just pull in one variable at a time. And so now the active index that this content component and the one that this title component has is the same because it's coming from the top level. But it's implicitly passed rather than explicitly passed. So now that we've done that, we have these passed in. We can see is active index. I don't know why we're getting some of these expanded right here. I have a feeling I messed something up, but that's okay. We're live coding, so it's natural to mess up everything you've ever prepared for. Let's see. Oh, all of them have class expanded. Oh, that shouldn't happen. I'm going to take out this is disabled thing really quick. And then, oh, the index is always 0. Oh, we should do that, shouldn't we? Okay, cool. Well, hey, next lesson. So one cool thing too that we'll probably need to do is actually make this index real. And so we should probably set it somewhere. We could set it up here and have some index variable created at the accordion CC level. But here's the thing. How do you make something self-aware? When you have all of these children, again, we don't want to say index equals 0, index equals 1, index equals 2. And so the way that you can do that is by render position. And so because this section was declared first, it's the one that should be getting index equals 0. And because this one is second, it's the one that should be getting index equals 1. And so to be able to do that, again, this children prop, it's misunderstood, but it's also awesome. Children is an array, unless there's just one of them, and then it's an object, and there's modules for that to help. But anyway, we're just going to assume everything's an array right now because we're live coding. What we can do, instead of just putting in children, we can do children.map. Children.map, and then for everything inside of here, we can return child, and we'll do that, child. And so nothing has changed because, again, this is pretty much how React works under the hood. children.map and then returning each individual child is the same thing as just rendering the children variable. But now that we have access to just this child right here, what we can do is we can start passing information specifically to each individual child separately, rather than just plopping the entire children variable in there. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little switcheroo, move this accordion context inside of here. Don't yell at me yet, I'm fixing it. There we go. And then I'm going to wrap these in brackets. And so now, this child, each of them has this separate provider that still does the active index and set active index. That's still a normal thing. But now we can also pass its own index. And so, in case you didn't know it, the second parameter to map is an index. And so I can pass an index right here. And now the value that a child gets, it has access to this index variable. And so I can get rid of this to do right here and do index right here. Ooh, okay, and then I can also get the index right here too. Index, like this. What? Look at that. Oh! Thank you. And so, I just think that's so cool, and I'm so happy it worked. But the fact that you can kind of make this component, it's a lot of lines of code, and that's also because I decreased my line length and everything for the demo. But the fact that you can create a component like this is really powerful, because now, let's just say I'm the person that wants to rearrange the icons. I can take out this and do Dornburn like this, and then voila, it's rearranged. It's just done. And as a user of this UI library, I can make the changes that I want. And if I say, oh, well, actually, I want to rearrange these, I can put a section down here like this. Or let's just say I not only want the content to be on the bottom, but I also want it to be on the top. And it'll look weird, but hey, look at that. Now it just pops up both. And that's what I want, gosh darn it. And so you're giving the power to your users to use this kind of API. Oh, and I just realized I didn't actually implement the disabled part. We can do that really quick. So because we know that the disabled part is going to be a prop on section, and I'm going to move it down back here again and maybe get rid of that second thing, because that was confusing even for me. We'll keep it on top though, because it's weird. So anyway, we want to add this disabled prop to section, and so we know that this is going to be a Boolean prop that's passed to section, but we want to be able to tell all of our children about it without explicitly doing it. So what do we got to use? Yeah, you're learning. Okay, great. So what we can do is we can just make another context, and we can say section context. You can have contexts within context. It's like that movie Inception, but it's contextception. And we'll do create context, and we'll do the exact same thing. I'll do section context dot provider, and then just pass the children inside of there, like that. And now we can give it this value of disabled. And so now all of the children have access to this value. And so we have this is disabled equals false. Now we can pull disabled out, and we're just calling it disabled here. And we can do use context of section context like this, and take away our to do. And I gotta stick that in there. But besides that, and I need to add my double ternary beauty thing, like this, disabled, and then disabled, like that. Hey, look at that. And that's how we add the disabled thing. But anyway, again, you can have context within context. I could even put, my CSS probably can't handle it, but I could even put an accordion within an accordion. And again, because I have like a set width and centering thing and everything, because this is a demo, it will probably break everything. But I could do that, and that's because of the way context works is it takes like the most specific context, similar to how CSS works. And so it would know that this is an accordion within an accordion, and you can poke around with it. I put all of this on GitHub, by the way, so you can pull it up and I can show you. But anyway, back to slides. Compound components are great because they give the user of your library control of the markup. So similar how we as users of HTML tables can rearrange the rows and the data and everything however we want, someone who's using our own compound component library can do the exact same thing. And it might look weird if they don't use it right, but with the right guardrails in place and everything, you can really just kind of let them go free with all of your different components, and you're giving them the Lego set to build a nice Lego masterpiece. And what's nice too is there's a separation of concerns. And so any logic with state and different business logic and stuff is kind of separate from rendering, and also the parent doesn't have to care how the children are rendered or how many children are rendered. It just knows that it's supposed to render children and it's supposed to pass a certain amount of state. The state is just managed as a whole as a big compound component, hence the context that's being passed around. But the children themselves, they just have their job and they do it well. And so having that kind of separation there, that modularity, makes it much more easy to maintain and debug. Whenever something's going wrong, you know it will be in that specific title component or content component, rather than saying, okay, well, it's somewhere in this giant accordion, we'll figure it out. And then also extensibility. If, let's just say, you wanted to have an accordion, but you wanted to be able to add some kind of special styling or some kind of special type of component, that just means that someone can create their own little component that can be built right into your compound component, and it's really flexible. You can extend it different ways. You can add as many types of children as you want without having to rewrite your entire API or add another prop and add a bunch of if statements everywhere in case that prop exists. And it's really, really powerful. And so I guess you saw the thank you slide. But anyway, that's my pitch for using compound components for building reusable libraries. And thank you very much. Yeah, I can. Okay. Questions? Okay, cool.
Cool. Does anyone have any questions? Ellie, do you have a question? Sure.
Also, that's both my Twitter and GitHub username, and I literally pushed it to GitHub like right before my talk. So look for Accordion on that if you want to.
The first one in the repository list.
Yeah, it'll be there.
I'm sorry, I
They're
Hello,
just-
is this on? Yeah.
Oh.
Thank you very much for the talk. It was really inspiring. So I've built a couple of these compound components, and I think they're really good. They provide a lot of flexibility. But so one thing I saw is that they're a bit harder to optimize for performance, since they tend to accept children and they change on every render. So that made me question, maybe there are areas of an app where they're more suitable and other areas where they're less suitable, like maybe more for like the design system, compound components, and maybe app level more like kind of single entry, as you put it. What's your experience there?
Yeah, so that's a good question, and performance is always the thing that people bring up, especially when context is concerned, because I think context is still new enough that it needs to be improved in that regard with compound components and just in general. I feel like once context and reducers are optimized to the nth degree, we don't need Redux anymore, but that's a whole other debate I'm not going to get into. I'm sorry. Anyway, but I think with regards to that, yes, I think these are great for design systems specifically, and that being said, it can be a container for any kind of state that you want in an application. A really solid example, I guess, of a compound component that is used not just in a design system but at the app level is React Router. It's a browser router, and every route component inside of there is just a component that is using the context of that container for the history API and everything. And so I would say, yes, you're right. There are still some performance things that could be improved with context, but I think that's it's the kind of thing where React is pretty good at optimizing itself. It's our own calculations and our own code that need to be memoized and improved, so that way we don't have to worry about re-renders as being the thing that slowed down our application. Hopefully that kind of answered your question.
Thanks. Yes.
Any other questions?
So,
Oh, I'm sorry.
my spotlight.
I'm so sorry. Do you want a hug or something?
No, that's weird.
Yeah.
We literally just met.
Yeah, it's true. Anyway.
Does anyone else have a question? Okay, I'm gonna do the 3, 2, 1 thing. And one question's gonna pop up. 3, 2, 1.
Cool.
What do you want to know? You have 2 mics.
Oh no. I have nothing to say.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
Well then.
Woo! Thanks everyone.